What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. I am here in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Live podcast. We are the premier podcast. We interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders all throughout this great country. Today is no different. We have my great friend, Miss Christina Krause from Delaware. How's it going, Christina?
Going amazing. Amazing.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you on. This is your second appearance on our podcast. The first appearance doesn't really count because you were with you were kind of with another guest, and I didn't really get to dig in and ask you a lot of the questions I wanted to ask you about your expertise, which is direct mail, leads, lead generation, follow-up, and we really want to understand that. That's one of the keys to the real estate business. So tell everybody, for those that don't know who you are, and what you do.
Okay. My name is Christina Krause. I'm one of the owners of Postal Impact. Postal Impact is a company that is rooted in data and analytics. Everything we do, I should say, is rooted in data and analytics. We handle the direct mail marketing campaigns of investors all across the nation. We do everything from using the data to generate their lists, to studying mail pieces, finding out what are the most effective forms of mail, postcards, letters, etc. It's a completely done-for-you model. So we not only generate the lead list, but then we handle their mail campaign. We track their data all the way through the sales pipeline. Hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit about that, because I'm a really big advocate of doing that. Oftentimes people are so focused on lead lists and thinking that the list is the magic, and where we find most of the breakdown is in the conversion process. So we do that. We use that data and analytics to essentially help our clients maximize their conversion. And then from that standpoint, also, we have created for our clients virtual lead managers. These are people who are pre-trained to kind of help nurture and audit leads all the way through the process. Again, we've found so many of our clients losing so much opportunity by mishandling their leads, by not handling their leads properly. So we've kind of trained virtual assistants on the proper way to nurture and to audit that lead through the process, as well as to run individual customized follow-up sequences on the leads. So I'm really passionate about that right now. I'm starting to recognize the fact that, again, it's not as much about the list, although generating a really good motivated seller list is important. It's far more important how you're handling those leads, how you're conducting yourself with that lead once it's in your office and in your possession.
So data, not drama, right? Like Mark Evans taught us a few months back on our podcast that we want to analyze data. We don't care what the drama is. We don't care what you think or what you feel. We need to know the data. And it sounds to me like you guys are really digging into the data so real estate investors like ourselves can understand when we're mailing. Are we even supposed to mail? Like, what's the best form? And then you just said something else that we're going to touch on totally, because it's probably the most important thing to real estate investing, to wholesaling, or just doing your own marketing, which is follow-up and which is conversion. So we're definitely going to touch on that. So we got a jam-packed show. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to get to all this stuff. But let's start on the very, very basic level. You said earlier, Christina, that you're doing a lot of direct mail for other real estate investors.
Yeah.
I've heard from some people, they think direct mail's dead. Is direct mail dead?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I would say right now we're in a period of time where there is there's kind of a boom to direct mail. We're seeing a lot of success with it. And I think it's more just a matter of being consistent and methodical. Once again, I love how you said data, not drama, because so many of us tell ourselves stories that may or may not be true. And I see this happen all the time. I see people all the time make major shifts in their businesses based on, you have a bad month or a bad response rate month with your direct mail. Then you hear a couple of other people on Facebook say direct mail sucks, it fell off a cliff. Next thing you know, people are eliminating entire campaigns. I see this a lot with PPC. Tons of people leaving PPC by droves on the rhetoric that PPC doesn't work any longer. And what we're here to do as a company is to make sure that people ask themselves better questions. Why did your response rate drop off? Why is PPC not working? I'm not suggesting that the right answer isn't sometimes to eliminate things, although I think more often than not, if it's kind of a tried and true method, you might shift more money to something that's working, but still keep some kind of system going. I'm not a big fan of eliminating things altogether and then picking them back up later, because I know how critical momentum is. But I see so many people making major shifts out of things like PM. And at the end of the day, I think it's really important for us to run our businesses like business owners. The fact that if you put $1 into this ATM machine and you get 2 out, but the ATM next door, if you put $1 in, you get 4 out. If either one of them is a limited resource, meaning that there's not an unlimited amount of $1 bills you can put into the $4 machine, there is no reason for you to stop putting $1 into the machine that's spitting out 2. Does that make sense? So just because this one is giving you $4 right now doesn't necessarily mean that this one is broken, especially when you consider the fact that there's ebbs and flows to everything. Look at the way that culture has changed things. So sometimes, depending on what culture is saying, one of the things that we're discovering right now with direct mail is less is more. The more condensed you can make your message, the better the response rate. That wasn't always the case. 2 years ago, people wanted a longer explanation of what you do. They wanted to understand more about your company. They wanted to connect more on the written level. That's not the case now, and that's going to change again at some point. So the point being, you have to constantly study what's working and then shift. Not necessarily eliminate, just ask a better question. Why is this not working anymore? Not just, this isn't working anymore and I'm done. I mean, it's an immature response, frankly, to things that affect you in a really major way.
So it's awesome stuff. You've given me like a million notes already.
I know. You know what? You asked me something. I don't even remember what you asked me. I just went down a rabbit trail.
That's what I love about you.
You're just like,
that's what I love about you. You gave us some great information. But I want to touch. But Christina, I want to touch on a lot of this stuff because you bring up a lot of great points. And let's kind of start at the top. Let's continue on this direct mail path for a second. Direct mail is not dead. That was the question. That was a long answer to say that direct mail is not dead. You're having a lot of success with direct mail.
No. Next question.
No, I don't want questions like that. Otherwise, the interview will last 5 minutes. So if direct mail is not dead, Christina, and you've given us some great tips already, you said consistent and methodical to your direct mail, ask better questions. We need to know, in order to even ask better questions, we have to know what the data is, which you already know. So give us some keys, some very specific things that we need to keep in mind or do when it comes to our direct mail campaigns. And maybe those answers are different for different parts of the country, because I know you're sending out direct mail, you're helping people with mail all over the country in lots of different types of markets. So maybe the answer to that question is different for maybe a Birmingham where I am versus a Phoenix or an LA. So what are some keys to direct mail?
Okay, so for sure, things react differently to the point that, most of the really big investors have been in the major, kind of the major cities and major areas. And what we know for certain is that if you are in what I call something of an ancillary, kind of territory or county, a smaller county, your ROI almost 100% of the time, especially if you're executing any kind of sophisticated campaign, is going to be higher. And I mean, it makes sense on so many levels. There's less competition, because you've got a ton of competition in kind of the major cities and metropolitan areas. But even the competition that you have are, they're not seasoned investors. So if you're executing any kind of methodical or consistent or sophisticated marketing, you're going to run the table. So you're almost always, you're going to see a higher response rate. And let me stick a pin in this response rate thing, because it really frustrates me sometimes when people are so focused on response rate. I care about response rate, but I care very little about response rate. when you're looking at your KPIs, you're looking at what should you track from a direct mail standpoint. You need to track your response rate, but what's way more important, again, if you ask a better question, what's a better question than what's my response rate? A better question is what's my net lead rate? So what that means is I have my response rate, then I have my opt-outs, the people who are calling in and saying, take me off your list. Then I have what's left, which is a net lead rate. So I cannot tell you how many times people come to me and they say, oh, this is getting a consistent 3% response rate. It's amazing. Google Street View is a really good example of this. Google Street View will always drive your response rate higher. But if your response rate is high and your net lead rate is low or your convert rate is low, I couldn't care less what your response rate is. As a matter of fact, the higher your response rate, if your net lead rate is low and your convert is low, it's a worst case scenario because now you're taking up additional time and bandwidth from your team. So, we talk about things like Google Street View. When you're testing Google Street View, 100% of the time, your response rate's going to go up, right? However, does your net lead rate also go up? And if it doesn't, it's not worth spending the extra money on Google Street View or taking up your people's time on Google Street View. So you really have to test this.
What is that? What do you mean when you say Google Street View? What is that?
So this is a really popular method right now. The Google Street View are postcards or letters where you can actually put the image of the person's house on that letter or postcard. And it can be really effective. We find it to be most effective in lower to moderate income housing, less effective, by the way, in the higher price ranges. In fact, far less effective. We've not tested it yet in a higher price range where it's worthwhile. You get a high response rate, but a very, very low net lead convert rate on those. It just really ticks people off in the higher price ranges. It's not worth it.
So I want to go back to something I think you were trying to say, at least something that I kind of gathered from what you said. Were you kind of alluding to most people who do direct mail, or most people who are wholesalers, most people who do direct mail are not consistent and methodical with their direct mail? Oh, yeah. I mean, I hate using really big numbers, but I'm telling you, maybe I've run across one or two who do it consistently. And one or two what?
One or two investors, period. Like
in the country?
That I have personally worked with, and I've worked with I've personally worked with hundreds and hundreds of investors, and I certainly know thousands of investors. It's a common theme. This is a very, very common theme with people. Man, I know what I should be doing, but I just can't seem to do it consistently. One of the things that I speak about a lot is how to own a business versus running a business. And one of the biggest differentiators that I see between like a moderate investor versus the really high level investors that we work with, one of the biggest differences that I see between that shift is really high level people understand what they're good at and they trust their history. So if you have a history of saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to those postcards that are sitting in the corner of my office. I'm going to scrub all those return postcards. I'm going to get them out of my mail list. If you have that stack and you've been saying for more than 3 months that you're going to get to it, or if you know what you should be doing, but for whatever the reason, whether it's a lack of discipline on your part or just volume and you just can't get to it, stop convincing yourself that you're going to become this different person and all of a sudden you're going to get really consistent and methodical with what you do, and outsource or automate it and take it off of your plate and out of your hands and stick to what you're really, really good at. The reason why we started doing direct mail, by the way, we started out just selling probate leads. The only reason why we got into direct mail is because we realized that the leads weren't working because they weren't being properly mailed. So I would say, I don't know what percentage, maybe less than 5% of real estate investors who handle their own mail and don't have someone else doing it for them, whether it's an employee or a company like mine that does it, does not do it methodically and consistently. I mean, you got to hit that when you're dripping, you got to hit it, like clockwork. So to me, what that means is there's tremendous opportunity for someone who did want to come along, maybe even if they're newer, and could be listening to this,
tremendous opportunity for someone to come along and be consistent and methodical with their direct mail. And we talk about it all the time. Consistency is key. Like,
yes.
And you talked about it too. Like, we don't want to shut anything off because momentum is key. Talk about just the importance of consistency and momentum with your direct mail or with any marketing, really.
Yeah, so we have the data that proves that it is the third or fourth drip where things actually start to take off with direct mail. So when people come to me and they want me to handle their direct mail campaign, I always tell them, listen, you've got to give me a minimum of 3 months or else this doesn't even work. Like if you need fire to happen in the first month of your mail campaign or you can't afford to continue, find another method. I'm not saying quit. I'm saying don't do direct mail. Because direct mail and even a lot of the other methods, you've got to do this consistently. I can prove to you, and I don't know why this happens. I really don't. I would say when I even talk to other investors, they say it's drip 5 or 6. That's their fire drip, right? But we're talking about, 3, 4, 5 months worth. And then, it's almost kind of like it goes like this and then it goes like that. I don't know why that happens. I wish I did, but I can prove it to you in the data. That it's the third, for us, it's the third to fourth drip. I hear pretty consistently it's anywhere from drip 3 to 5, 6 that most investors say the magic actually starts to happen. Because that first drip, you're kind of eliminating your opt-outs. You're eliminating the people that say, don't ever call me again. I hate your guts. That's kind of what that first drip is for. The second drip kind of normalizes. Your response rate normally goes down on the second drip. And for those that don't know, when I'm talking about drips, we're talking about taking a list, a group of people that you're mailing to. You mail them once. By dripping, I mean now you need to mail them. When it comes to direct mail, if you're only ever going to do one mailer, it's probably not even worth your time. It's like maybe you'll get lucky, right? So with direct mail, you need to drip it. You need to mail it multiple times. I have some clients who are on month like 21 or drip 21, not month 21, drip 21. I mean, as long as the list is responding, and again, if you're watching your data and your numbers, you'll know when you see the drop off if you need to refresh your list. But you've got to keep dripping it consistently. Gotcha. And my suggestion, by the way, I've said this a lot, is most people mail it every month. Mail it every 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And the reason why is if you mail it every 4 weeks, then you're always hitting them at the same time every month. And you don't know when people's pain points are. You want to make sure that you're hitting them at different pain points of the month because everybody's pain point is different. Yeah.
Let me ask you a couple of kind of quick hitter questions. So you kind of answered this. Maybe it's hard to tell, but how many times should we be sending to the same list?
Yeah, I mean,
and should we be scrubbing every time?
Yes. So as you get your opt-outs, you're going to scrub those out. As you get your direct mail, you're going to scrub those out. We actually refresh our lists every single month. So our lists are a little bit more evergreen. We're going in and based on the data, we're actually pulling and blending new leads into the ones that we're dripping. So it's kind of a little bit evergreen. What most people do is they pull a list and they mail that for a certain period of time and then they pull another list. I would say an absolute minimum of 6 times. And I mean just absolute minimum. But again, I know a lot of, especially the bigger investors that just mail in perpetuity until somebody says, take me off your list, don't call me again, until the data shows that this is, you've just fallen off the face of the planet. But that's not likely, frankly, because everybody's motivation level is constantly changing. Literally, somebody who won't sell today, something could happen, and we've seen this happen many times, and tomorrow they're ready to sell. We all have examples of that even in our own lives, of things that you wouldn't have done today, but tomorrow you're like, okay, I'm all in.
Just think about the credit card offers from the same credit card company that you keep getting, that I keep getting. I'm going to speak for myself, that I keep getting every week or every 2 weeks, like clockwork. I get a Capital One offer every 2 weeks for probably my whole life, for probably the past 15 years. Right. So just think of it in those terms. You never know when there's a day where that person is going to need that. So how many drips is very hard to answer that question. You're saying 6 at a minimum. This is the next question I had. You said a second ago that you don't think necessarily that the list is the magic, that the magic is going to be more in the follow-up and the conversion. We're going to talk about that in a second. So I don't want this to be part of your answer. We're going to, a whole separate part of the show is going to be devoted to that. how many addresses should we be sending per month, per week, per whatever? Like how many addresses do we feel like we need to be hitting for it to be worthwhile?
So here's where it gets tricky. Here's where it gets tricky because most people don't track their data. And here, I'm going to give you an example of why data is so very powerful and why it is absolutely critical. If you want legs in this business, you better start to get serious about knowing your numbers. Because otherwise, the economy, this robust economy has allowed a lot of inefficiency, has allowed investors to hide a lot of inefficiency.
Totally.
I often say, sometimes I think doing good is the enemy of being great. Because when you're going along and you're making money, you're not put in an uncomfortable position to step up to the next level. So you can just kind of like convince yourself that this is good. And that's, this is what I'm talking about like nurturing the lead and making sure that you're treating every single lead, like the asset that it is. But at the end of the day, you have to know your numbers in order to understand what you need to spend on marketing. So let me show you an example of this. If you know that you're getting 0.5%, and that's pretty much the industry average, it's just under 0.5% right now. So let's call it 0.5%.
Response rate, or is that net lead rate?
Response rate. Let's say you get 0.5%. It's much higher in some areas, much lower in others. But that's why you have to know your own numbers, because in Alabama, the response rate could be pushing 2%. In Florida, you might be at 0.2%. I mean, you have to know what your norm is, right? So once you know what your norm is, then you have to ask yourself, what's your typical conversion on that? So the KPIs that we track for our clients are response rate, net lead rate, which is response rate minus opt-outs, appointment booking rate. People miss this all the time. On your net lead, how many appointments are you booking from your net leads? What's your appointment booking rate? Because that's a metric that you can measure and that you can improve upon. Incidentally, it needs to be at least 30% of your net leads you need to be booking your appointments on. And then of the appointments that you're going on, what percentage of those are you closing? These metrics are not only going to help you improve, because now you can set goals based on that. You can say, all right, we're only booking at 18% appointment. We need to, our new goal is to book at a 25% appointment rate. Once you have those metrics, you can actually measure them. But why those metrics are powerful, and to answer your question specifically, how many mailers do I need to mail out? I can't tell you how many people say, I want to do 20 deals a month. Okay, what are your numbers? Because your numbers are going to tell you how much that means you have to mail.
Right.
And if you suck at conversion, you might have to mail 200,000 letters in order to get your 20 deals. So what are you going to fix first? Very oftentimes you need to, scale to be better before you scale to be bigger.
Totally.
Because if you're not converting the way that you should, do you really want to spend more money duplicating a mediocre process, or do you want to fix it? But that is a powerful number that, again, I don't think most people want to know it. They kind of don't want to know. They kind of just want to go along and say, no, I want to do 20 deals a month because that sounds cool. Look at your numbers now, and that will tell you what you're going to have to do from a marketing standpoint in order to generate that kind of volume. Now, I think it's just easier for people to say, I want to do 20.
Christina, what about the person who's brand new and they're about to do their first mail campaign, but they've never done a deal? They're like brand new to the industry. How would you, they don't know their numbers at all.
Yeah.
Like what would you advise this person to do?
I'm going to be honest with you. If somebody hasn't done a deal, I'm very reluctant. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm very reluctant to have someone start with direct mail as their method of marketing.
Why? Because
direct mail is expensive. So I don't know that I like the idea of someone cutting their teeth on an expensive lead. Back when we used to just do probate leads, I used to tell people that all the time. Probate leads are pretty much the most expensive lead out there because, sometimes not sometimes, 80% of the time we're physically having someone walk in, we're hiring somebody and physically having somebody go into the courthouse to gather the lead for our client because it's very, very difficult to get. That's not the kind of lead you want to cut your teeth on. That's not a learning lead. It's just too expensive. So I don't know. I think that if you've got money and you don't mind spending it, because the problem with direct mail is that you need to do it in volume. Like direct mail works best in volume. So if you're only mailing 100 letters, think about this. If you're mailing, 1,000 letters even, at a 0.5% of a response rate, the amount of actual leads that you're going to generate from mailing 1,000 mailers is very, very small. And again, I'm not saying it's not high value, but you have to be really good at converting that. You really have to understand the value of that lead and be really good at converting it. I'd rather see you do something that's less expensive that maybe will generate more phone calls. But it's a good learning ground. Go driving for dollars, go put out bandit signs. Again, if you've got an unlimited budget, that's great. But most people don't. Most people, when they're getting started, don't have a ton of time and don't have a ton of money. I'd rather see you do something, whether it's MLS or, working with other wholesalers or networking or I'm trying to think of some of the other, bandit signs if they're legal in your area, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
That feels better to me.
Okay. No, that's good. That's interesting. Let's talk about probate. Before we're going to talk about probate, and then we're going to talk about virtual lead manager and how to convert, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your response rate, it doesn't matter what your net lead rate is. If you can't convert, you can't convert. So right. I know you know Scott Jelinek. Scott Jelinek came on our podcast probably 2 years ago when I first launched this thing, and he said, no one should ever do direct mail when they start, because when you're first getting started, you suck. You're terrible. You're terrible at conversions. You're terrible at converting them, and you need to learn on an inexpensive lead, just like you just said. So I somewhat agree with that. Let's talk about probate specifically though first. The hardest lead to get, I just heard you say. The most expensive lead to get, I just heard you say. Someone's brand new, or maybe brand new to probate, doesn't know anything about probate. First of all, define it. What is it? And then how do we actually get these leads?
Okay. So I'll caveat this. I actually work with Scott and his students. So, I mean, they're really, really, they're good. And I think that, I think that Scott would probably caveat that the same way that I will. I actually think it's really, really good if you're going to do it yourself. I think doing some of that yourself up front is really, really good for you long-term as a business owner, because it will allow you to see the value of outsourcing. You tend to minimize how difficult something is or how easy it is to be consistent at something until you actually try it and you realize, okay, this is not my genius zone. I'm not going to be consistent. And it frees you, I think, in some ways to do it, to go, I need to outsource this to someone else. But probate specifically is one of those leads where I do like it. I like probate leads for newer investors if you're going to be the one doing the work. I don't know about outsourcing it, because if you outsource it, it's really expensive, and I'll explain why. But probate is the process that most counties require. The vast majority of counties require people to go through when someone passes away without a will or without any kind of pre-planning. So in each county, the dollar amount is different. But if the assets that person owned when they passed away exceed a certain dollar amount, and this is key to understanding probate. If it exceeds a certain dollar amount, then their family members have to go into the county. They have to fill out some paperwork. They essentially have to declare that this person died with assets. The intent originally of probate, at least so they say, is to give creditors an opportunity to go in if money is owed and to attach themselves to those assets, right? But there's also taxes and things like that that are associated with it from a governmental standpoint, not even to get into that. So family member has to go in and essentially open probate. The process of probate, again, is different with every county, but at the end of the day, there's a notification process. In different counties, it's different, but 2 to 3 times the family members have to put into newspapers or certain publications. Each county has a list of publications that qualify, but the family basically has to advertise the fact that someone has died and that there are assets, right? You can, if you go into the courthouse, find out what the assets are, More often than not, it's going to involve real estate because of the dollar amount limit that I referenced earlier. So if, it might be 30, 40, 50 grand. In some places like California, it's there's some counties where it's like 120,000. The assets have to hit 120,000 before probate even needs to be open. So more often than not, it's going to involve real estate. For those of you that know probate, I can't believe how often I have to say this to people, but I am not an advocate of filtering out only the probate leads where you know for sure that a house is involved. Because you can go to the courthouse and you can research it. I don't even teach how to do that more, but you can research to see, is there an actual house involved in this probate? Here's why that's not a good idea. Back when we did this study, we figured out that anywhere between 40 to 45% of the houses that we personally bought, because I'm an active real estate investor, we bought from a surviving spouse. Here's the interesting thing about probate. If the asset is being passed from spouse to spouse, you don't have to open probate. The house. So in the event that you have a surviving spouse, you're never going to capture that opportunity. You're going to miss 40 to 45% of your opportunity by eliminating the house because the house didn't have to be included in probate. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I don't personally suggest that you do it. It's also very labor intensive to do it. You have to go through paperwork. It's not as simple. And I think by the time you get done paying to do that, you might as well just mark it to everything anyway. Go ahead.
No, so are you saying then that we should just find all of the probate leads?
Yes.
Mail to all of them?
Yeah, estate probate leads.
Probate leads. So what is that? How do we even find that?
Yeah, so probate means a lot of different things. And it almost always means multiple things in counties, and you have to figure this out. So it could mean guardianship issues. It could be name changes. It could be custody. Probate is not just estate. You need to look for the estate probates. That is a distinction you do need to make. All right. And then you're going to mail to every one of those. So there's about 20% of states where you can actually get this information online. All right. So you could literally Google probate cases in Birmingham, Alabama, and just a little bit of sleuthing will tell you whether or not you can actually get them online. I happen to know in Alabama you cannot. So 80% of the time, these records are not available online. And frankly, I think that's better because the harder it is to get the lead, the less competition you have. Imagine if you can get it online, how many people are going online to get it, because probate is very difficult to get, but it is also hands down across the board over all of the years that we've been doing it, the most lucrative lead that exists. It's the lead that's ultimately generally has your biggest payoff. And it makes sense, right? Because these are people who generally don't owe a lot of money on the home, and you're buying it from somebody who, kind of hit a windfall, if you will, a little. They're not attached to the home. They're not trying to live there. They're not in financial distress. They just want to get rid of it and get some money, really.
So how do we get the lead? So how do we, if it's that?
You can either do it online, if you can.
If we can't do it online.
Yep. If not, though, that information is going to be housed in somewhere in a county courthouse somewhere in your county. Again, a Google search will tell you which courthouse houses the probate leads. The only option you have at that point is to walk into that courthouse. You drive to, it's public information. You go to the courthouse. There's almost always a clerk there, and they will direct you to where the probate information is located. Now, I don't want to suggest that these people are always the nicest, most friendly, most amazing people. Sometimes they are. Sometimes we literally have some courthouses where they're like, do you want me to just pull that for you? And I can just send you the list every month. Jackpot. Yeah, but that doesn't happen all the time, right?
That's not happening in Alabama.
No, yeah. More often than not, they're slightly annoyed. So they have to, and just understand this. It is public information. They have to provide that to you. Be as nice as you possibly can, because if this is something you're going to do consistently, these are people you're going to see all the time.
What are we asking for specifically?
So you're going in and you're saying, I need to know, where do you house your probate cases, your probate lead cases? And then ask them specifically. You could probably figure it out, but ask them, do you have a section where the estates are separated from, the other cases? I'm looking specifically for estates. If you say estates, they'll know what you're talking about.
So
sometimes they're separated.
So I've done this. I've gone into our courthouse here in Birmingham in Jefferson County. I've gone into our courthouse and I've asked these questions. I've done that. I've gotten on the computer where all these leads or all these cases are housed, and it's just a bunch of information.
Yeah.
What are we looking for when we see all this information?
Here's all you need. All right. And you can get gummed up with a lot of other things, and I don't think it's important. What's important is the named representative on the case. Who is the named representative? Again, these are things that the clerk can help you with. If you go to the clerk and you say, can you tell me where the named representative is? Every once in a while, it's an executor or an executrix. But I would say 98% of the time, it's the named representative. Who is that on the case? You want the named representative on the case and their mailing address, which, by the way, guys, is not necessarily the mailing address of the home that you will be purchasing. That's a mistake that people make. You really can't filter these leads because you want to mail it to the person who is responsible for liquidating that home. That's the person you want to contact. So oftentimes there's a list of family members. Oftentimes all of the other heirs are named as well. So there might be 5, 6 heirs sometimes, but there's always a primary named representative, the person who's representing the estate. That's the person that you want to mail. You want their name. You want their mailing address. That's it. Move on. That's all you want.
Awesome. Golden information from Christina Krause. Awesome stuff. So we got all these leads. We got our list. We got all these leads. We want to start mailing, and we send out our first mailers. We get some calls. Maybe they say, not right now. Follow up with me. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. The most important part of this whole entire business, to me, it's proven. It's like 75% of our deals are through follow-up, period. 75%. That's 3/4 of our deals. It's follow-up.
Yes.
What do we do? How do we get a really good airtight follow-up system to where no lead is left behind ever?
Yeah. I am a huge advocate in businesses of having a lead manager. All right. So that's somebody who is tasked with watching that lead like a hawk from the moment it hits your door until you decide to call it dead. And it better be genuinely dead when you decide to call it dead. So lead managers do everything from make sure that when a phone call comes in, the lead is properly generated in your CRM. You have a lead that's in your CRM, and that every step of the way, no ball is getting dropped. So it's a set of eyes. This is not a salesperson, people. This is not your admin. This is not your acquisitions person. It's not your internal sales agent. It's not the person answering the calls. This is a dedicated person. This is the most valuable asset in your business. And every single one of these leads are potentially worth anywhere from $10,000 to $1,000. We're not talking about a $50 lead. We're talking about something that has an outrageous amount of value, and it is well worth the investment to have a dedicated person on your staff. If you're doing any kind of volume, to have a dedicated person on your staff guarding those leads with their life. Every lead that comes in, they should know what the disposition of that lead is. They should know what's going on with it. To quickly affirm what you just said, we just got done with a 3-year study of our clients' data. And for those people that had any kind of follow-up system in place, 74%, which is 1% below what you said, and I hear this consistently when I'm talking to experienced investors, 74% of our clients, their deals came in the follow-up 30 days after the first point of contact with the client.
Wow.
Versus up front, the low-hanging fruit up front, which is what everybody's focused on. And I'm not saying don't focus on it. What I'm saying is don't neglect the backside of it. Of our clients who did not do follow-up, Brian, guess what percentage of them converted in the follow-up 30 days after the point of contact, of people who just didn't do any follow-up?
I don't know.
8%.
I couldn't follow the question. What was the question again? You lost me. The question was like 6 sentences long. I got lost.
That's everything. That's everything I do. You have to dig through all the words.
Say the question. What's the statistic again? What was 8%?
Of the clients who did follow-up, 74% of their deals came in follow-up. 74% of the total number of deals that they did happened in follow-up. Of the clients who did not do follow-up at all, only 8% of their deals happened in follow-up.
But they didn't do follow-up at all. Maybe that's where I got confused. They didn't do follow-up at all.
Because most investors don't. Brian, I'm telling you, most investors, if they do anything, barely do any follow-up at all, if at all. Yeah. They just, if somebody says, no, you can't come together on the price, they mark the lead and say they want too much money for their house. They want retail for their house. This is a dud lead. Totally. Well, guess what? Almost 80% of deals that happen in follow-up happen when you can't come together on price. When somebody has an unrealistic expectation of price, you can't come together on price, they want retail. 2-3 months from now, all that can change. Totally. They get more realistic. They get more people coming in saying, are you crazy? And they hear that 4 or 5 times. Now their back is up against the wall. They thought they had 3 months. 3 months later, they have to get out. And they're like, holy crap, or is that offer still good? I can't tell you how many times this happens. It happens all the time.
So I'm going to recap this entire podcast. I'm going to recap everything that was just talked about with 3.
You should let me recap it.
3 key
It'll
things.
Take me 2 more hours, but you should let me recap.
This is what I just heard Christina say through the course of this podcast is these are the 2 things that are going to separate you from 90+% of anyone trying to do this business. Here are the 2 things. 1, be consistent and methodical with your marketing. Consistent and methodical with your marketing. That's number 1. Number 2, follow up. Guard these leads with as if your life depended on them. These leads are worth potentially tens of thousands of dollars. So consistent and methodical with your marketing and follow up, no lead left behind. No one's doing it, Christina. That's insane.
I know. And honestly, it's why we created virtual lead managers, which is, kind of the new thing that we did, because for a year, with our clients, we saw this hole and we would talk to them and say, guys, we're tracking your data through the sales pipeline. Here's where your fail point is. And they would say, I know, we need to follow up. I know. And so nobody's arguing. Nobody's going, oh, there's no value in follow-up. Everybody in every industry, because now we're working with people outside of the real estate industry, everybody's saying, we get it. The genius of real good business owners is them going, I've been saying for a year that I know how important this is, and it's just not something I can get myself to do. We're not designed for that anyway, Brian. We're like entrepreneurs. We want to go out and conquer stuff. Totally. We don't want to look at 1,000 semi-valuable or what appear to be not valuable leads at all. We don't want to call those because we don't know which one in there we can go kill. You know what I mean? We want somebody to sift through it and hand us back the stuff that we can actually monetize. Yep. Here's the thing. We got really tired of telling our people, you need to do this, and watching them not do it. We created virtual lead managers, which are virtual assistants. And we found out, by the way, that it's ideal for this person not to be in your office because otherwise they get pulled into other emergencies and other things. But we basically pre-train these people into your CRM to manage your CRM, but also how to run follow-up sequences on these leads. You just kind of plop them into your business. They already have an understanding of the industry, of, generally what they should be doing. They have scripts for running follow-up sequences because initially, by the way, there's a lot of talk about fully automated follow-up sequences, and there's value to that. But initially, I really believe it needs to be a customized follow-up. I see too many examples of my clients converting leads where if you would just send a random text or a generic text, you wouldn't have converted that lead versus picking up the phone and saying, hey, I know you were supposed to close yesterday on that house. I just wanted to see if you did close or if there's anything more we could do. No, that deal fell apart. Let's do it. I mean, you're never going to get that in a fully automated sequence. So I think you need to have somebody, kind of sitting there running those follow-up sequences on those leads. So we actually drop them now into our clients' businesses. They monetize themselves. You know what I mean? This is a person that costs $24,000 a year. You need one deal. You need them to get one deal to pay for themselves and also take the stress off of you. But what we're finding is that with the vast majority of our clients, when these lead managers just go back into the bucket of your old leads, the leads that you're calling dead, and they shake those trees and they create low-hanging fruit situations again, almost immediately, I just had a message from a client. within the first 3 weeks of the lead manager starting, and I'm not even trying to sell virtual lead managers. I'm trying to get you guys to understand how important follow-up is. Within the first 3 weeks of this person picking up the phone, they got a $12,000 deal, assignment deal, wholesale, and they signed a 20-unit single-family resident package. They put a 20-unit single-family resident package under contract. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I mean, it's crazy. So if nothing else, assign someone in your office the task of going back and shaking the tree of what you call dead leads. Yep. Everybody has leads in their CRM that they don't even know what happened. You can look at the lead and be like, there are no nodes. I don't even know what happened here.
Christina, we did that about a year ago with all our old dead leads. We had somebody sit in our office. That was their entire job. Just call old leads. This is your job for the next 2 months. Do nothing but call. We did 3 deals immediately.
That's right.
And now we haven't gone back since.
I know, but here's the thing. Again, so let's circle back, full circle. It's about being consistent and methodical. We're just not designed to do that, which is why I'm such an advocate for outsourcing and automating, because we convince ourselves that we're going to do this. We have to look at our history and go, you know what? I have a history of doing this, getting really excited about it and dropping off. So what can I do to automate this process? Because there's value there. Not, I can't afford that, or I can't. Listen, if you want to be a business owner, you have to ask yourself, if I put $1 in the machine and I get 3 back, I'm not arguing with, I don't think I can keep them busy for 40 hours a week. I think I can only keep them busy for 30 hours a week. So I'm going to do nothing. No, if you put $1 in the machine and you get 3 back, just do it. That's what business owners do.
And keep doing it.
Yes, and keep doing it. And put a system or a person or a process or a structure in place that's going to hold you accountable and is not going to allow you to let off the gas. Just, again, consistency, being methodical.
Christina, I cannot tell that you are passionate about this at all. This is why we want to have you on the show again. I mean, this has been incredible to really and truly learn. I've learned so much. I took so many notes, and I'm like scribbling in the margins because I took notes on this whole page. Awesome stuff, guys. I know you just got some incredible value just by having Christina just kind of just share her expertise with us. It's been amazing. Christina, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about Virtual Lead Manager, learn more about you sending direct mail for them, things like that?
Yeah. So again, the model that we do for direct mail is a completely done for you model. So I'm not going to lie, it's a pricey model because it's just, it's very, very robust. But the way to contact us as far as that's concerned is postalimpact.com. By the way, we do probate leads. Our lead lists are very specialty lead driven. Probate lead is the only specialty lead that we do still sell individually because we have the network of people that can go into courthouses and gather the lead. So you can also go to postalimpact.com if you are interested in just hiring somebody to go and get the probate lead for you.
Just the lead, not you sending the mail to it.
Yeah. We will also mail it as long as we don't have a competitor in that market. Because once we work with somebody in a market, it's locked out. We only work with one investor in each market. So yes, as long as we don't have someone else there, we will actually also handle the mail piece for you. We're kind of known for our mail pieces, our high-end mail pieces. I'm up to 52 people who physically handwrite letters on addresses or addresses on letters. So you can get
you have in your office
yeah. Well, yeah, it's not a big, they work from home, but yeah, it's not like I don't have like a warehouse of people handwriting
of
letters.
Elves scribing for you.
Hey, look, okay, hold on. I'm going to show you something. We're about to test this as our, I hope you can see this. This is our June, July mailer. Check this out.
Closer.
You see that? Can you see it?
So someone hand wrote that.
Yeah, with silver ink. We're testing it. It's cool, right?
So this is a whole nother part of the show. I'm sorry. Let's not. Trying to recap.
All I'm saying is, and then we study that. We do that stuff, and then we study the data. Like, how did that perform versus how a different letter performs versus, all that stuff.
Yeah. That's a whole rabbit trail. We actually I'll link up the podcast that we did it's probably about a year, it's more than a year ago. I think it was in February of 18 is when you came to Birmingham. And
Okay.
we did a podcast when you're here. So I'll link that up in the show notes so you guys can go back and listen to Christina. We talked a lot about specifically like what they're writing, how they handwrite it. They're doing like invitation type of envelopes, the different envelopes, the colors, and
what the
all these
flap
different
looks
things.
like. I mean, we test everything. Yeah, we test everything. So that's postalimpact.com. Feel free to go there and check us out there. If you're interested in virtual lead managers, or even just finding out more about the functions that a lead manager in your office, because I'm very passionate about education, guys. It's not, for me, it's not about selling you a virtual lead manager. I just want you to follow up on these things. So there's a lot of information, a report on the website that you can get that tells you kind of the do's and the don'ts of the different functions that a lead manager should perform. That's at virtual lead managers, plural with an S, virtualleadmanagers.com.
Awesome stuff. Christina, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. I can't thank you enough for coming to Birmingham last year and speaking to our group. And I know you're going to be back again at the end of this year.
Yay, yes, in November.
Very excited to bring you back. So
I just want to party with you guys. The other stuff is secondary.
we're going to have a good time. We're taking a whole group of us, our real estate investors, are going to the Alabama football game in November, taking some people out for that. And they're going to come and hear Andy Werner speak in November. I think it's November 7th. So yeah, it's going to be awesome stuff. Thank you so much, though, Christina. I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your expertise. And I appreciate your support of REI Live and of Birmingham. We appreciate you.
Love it. Thank you.
See you guys. We love you too. Hit the subscribe button. We will see you next time.